Hey everybody, and welcome back to Stand By for Adventure. This is John. I wanted to go over something, once again, I feel like I say this every single time we do one of these episodes, a little bit different. Um, Today I wanted to talk about, and this is especially good for new GMs, it could even be good for more experienced GMs and super experienced GMs, and that is the age-old question that writers get, that DMs get, that anybody gets: where do you get your ideas? And this is one place that I get my ideas from regularly. And it can either start with a map or it ends with a map. And maps is what we're going to be talking about. What I have here on my screen, right here, is a Patreon page for Dyson Logos. And if you're not familiar with Dyson Logos, he's really done a ton of work in the last decade, and has become an absolutely incredible mapper. And if I were smart, I would sit down and start doing mapping and actually learn how to draw and make maps as good as he does, because they're fantastic. And he's not the only one. There are other people on Patreon who do this. I back both Dyson Logos and I believe that's his real name, and it's an absolutely fantastic name. I love it. And this Milby's maps, and Milby's maps too, are fantastic. It doesn't cost very much to become a patron for these guys, and I highly encourage it. I mean, this is just a dream come true for anybody who's been playing D&D forever and it just had to always come up with their own maps. And now we have people who are coming up with maps who are much more talented, much more creative when it comes to this sort of thing. They're much more willing to experiment and doing like weird maps that have sections that turn or move, or you roll dice to fill in different parts of them. Like, it's really incredible what they do. I also happened to just be looking, and saw this little search bar that says "Find a Creator," and I punched in maps, hoping that maybe it would search on that. Sure enough, it did, and it came up with way more than I ever would have thought. All of these people are map makers. You can see Dyson Logos here down at the bottom. Again, right there, that one. Kind of a Cthulhu face thing he's got on. And I am going to have to check out a bunch of these. Dyson Logos has 893 patrons, and the top person on here has over 8,000. So I am really curious about the sort of things that they make, and I'm going to dive into that probably when we are done here. And to give you an idea, this top one with 8,000 followers, or 8,000 patrons, has almost 1,200 images up on their Patreon site. So that's probably not 1,200 different maps. It could be maps with, maybe they did a preview of a map before it was finalized. Maybe they did some early sketches. Maybe I have no idea. But even so, just a ton of stuff available out there. And like I said, maps are a great way to give you ideas on what to run. What I am currently doing in my... I have an Eberron game that I'm running every Wednesday, and that's been going great. Totally love the game. I love the Eberron setting. It's so much fun. The characters have almost exclusively spent time in the city, except maybe one or two sessions where they went out into a swamp and nearly got killed by a dragon. And for that, I was... the characters are looking for some Hellfire swords, and I needed a base of operations for the people who have this sword. And was looking around, and stumbled across this, which is one of Milby's maps, and this is where I found Milby's maps, in fact. And because the city of Eberron is very high, like it's tall, it's super tall. It exists in this place that makes it possible for buildings to be built super, super high. There's a lot of flying creatures around. There's a lot of flying around from one section of the city to another with magic items and creatures and things like that. and I wanted to have a building that was part of these towers that are in Eberron. And I saw this image, and I was like, this Skywatch map that Milby made, uh, the way they made it was as a castle of some type floating on a giant piece of rock. Cool, that would be great. I could absolutely use that in any game, right? But looking through all these maps, I said, you know what? This actually would be a really cool map for a residence that was in Eberron and existed on multiple different levels, probably within the same neighborhood of Eberron, but it would be surrounded by all the other buildings and towers and everything else. So while this map, the interior of it, reflects what the whole place looks like, the exterior does not look like what's showing here, which is this castle floating on top of, or a watchtower floating on top of a giant piece of rock. Instead, it's built into the towers of Eberron. And in fact, right now, my player characters are in the midst of fighting in this location and are now trying to figure out, since they got what they came for, do they want to explore to see what else is here and see how big this place is? Do they want to do something else, just get out of here because they have their objective? And they have no idea what they're in for because they found this item due to a locate object spell, and they don't have any idea how involved this dungeon will be. They just knew they needed to get something from what turned out to be inside this building, and now they're inside and they're not sure what to do. They fought some like demons in there and an evil priest, and they really don't have a whole hell of a lot of an idea of what's going on. But these maps are just so fantastic that I can't help but look through. I mean, you can see at the top of the top of the screen right here, all of those tabs that are just like red and orange and green little colors. Those are all tabs of maps that I think are cool and that gave me an idea just from looking at them. You will note also that I am using Pinterest. If anybody's interested, feel free to find me on Pinterest. I don't know what I actually go by on Pinterest. Let's see. I guess it's at JON9836 is my name on Pinterest. So if anybody wants to follow my pages and my map pages and things like that, feel free. You are welcome to. Let's find maps are right here. And what I do when I need, if I'm running a game and players do something that I'm not expecting and they end up going to a bar and getting into a fight, I may not have planned for that. And that sort of situation comes up a lot when you're running a game for characters that have their own things that they want to do. You will not, just flat out, will not be able to prepare for everything that the players do. So having resources like a Pinterest page full of maps, or backing somebody on Patreon so you can get all sorts of maps and have them available to you, is a great idea because you can just go into that list of maps. So yeah, here we go. If they walked into a bar, I could just say, hey, you walked into the Saffron House, and I could use this whole map, I could use a section of the map, I could use 2 sections of the map, and just use this as my battle map. Easily download it, upload it into, download it on the computer, then upload it into something like Roll20 or any other virtual tabletop, and quickly run a fight, or run some sort of encounter, right? It doesn't have to be a fight. They could be sneaking around, they could be doing almost anything. But that kind of idea of being able to have all of these maps at your fingertips at any point is just fantastic. And you can find a ton of different things. You can see here's like classic building. This is a Parisian suburban house from obviously years ago, but it gives you a basic layout of what a house of this style would look like. Same thing with ships. You need a ship map. Here's a ship. You could find other ships on here. And some of them aren't specifically going to be mapped with, 5-foot squares and things like that. but you'd be surprised how many are. And again, they come in useful to be able to pull up at any time and use in your game's spur of the moment. But even better, as you go through and collect all of these maps, there's going to be some that you look at and go, oh, I have an idea for what can be in here. Like, this is just fantastic. I mean, as an example, and I did not pre-plan any of this. These are just the maps that are sitting on here. This is a map that just says ruins. I don't know why it's spelled that way, Ruines. But it is clearly the ruins of a building on the top of the map, and then an isometric view of going down below it and all the stuff in there. Now, just because the mapper has put, a pool of water in the first big chamber, you can kind of see a little bit of blue. My finger would be right about there now. Doesn't mean you have to have a map in there, and you could map this out from on top and be able to give the players a way to look at this, or just present it to them this way. It kind of depends on how you run your games. But I could easily see spotting this map and going, oh, this is a great location to have a goblin den. Like, they've come in and taken over this ruin. They've found all the underground parts of it. They don't really deal with anything upstairs. They like it to look empty and appear empty, and if anybody comes to investigate, they're not up there. They're only downstairs, and so you don't need a real map of the upstairs, like of the part that's out in the wilderness. Instead, you're only worried about what's underneath. And I think this would be a really fun map to run characters on, and it's got things like this river that, if I were coming up with a map, would I necessarily think to include a river? Probably not, but it's super cool and could lead to something else, and gives you the opportunity to have different sorts of encounters. There could be something bad living in their water. There could be treasure hidden in the water. There could be all sorts of different things. And that's the sort of stuff that looking at maps like this is really beneficial to, or for. This one, oh my goodness, I just loved. And this was also one of Milby's maps, and I am so happy that he is doing these maps. This is the Neuschwanstein castle in Bavaria. And this is where Mad King Ludwig lived, or I guess lived, yeah. And this is that map that all the Disney stuff is, or this is the building that all the Disney castles are based on. That one that's high in the mountains, and it's just absolutely gorgeous and completely ridiculously wonderful. And this is a map of it. So you could have this, absolutely classic and amazing castle and use it in your D&D game or whatever fantasy game you're playing. And you may not know right off the bat what you want to have in every single room, but at least you have the outline of the map that you could then populate however you want. You write little numbers on it, keep track of what's where. You could build it out as a straight dungeon crawl. You could use it as something that they have to get inside to steal some. Again, stealing things is common in my Eberron game because they're thieves. But this is just a fantastic map. He's got other maps that he's also done. One for a place that I actually went to years ago when I went to France. I'm not sure if I can find it here. But it was the Chenonceau Chateau, which is incredible, and it has this long room, or couple of rooms that actually stretch out across a river, but don't entirely cross the river, so it's not a bridge unless they lower a bridge, in which case you can get into this building, this chateau, and cross the river. What's interesting is this was used in World War II for spies and other escapees to get out of the occupied territory into this chateau and then get to freedom. And it's absolutely incredible. Let me see if I can find. Can I search in here? Nope, I can search here though. Shen. Be just a second. Maybe. Are you thinking? Yes, post with Shen. Let's see. Shen and So is kind of hard to spell. But look at here, all these maps I'm going by. So these are, what, Skatha's Rest, and it looks like it's actually a ruins. Maybe it's underwater, I'm not sure. And again, that could give you ideas. This is another castle that was Coxton Tower, which is a real world tower. And I just think these things are amazing because not only does it show you what these buildings look like from a medieval time period, it shows you how big they were, or really how small they were, and how interestingly they were built. Like in this one, you can't really see it very well, but there's a lower level first floor entrance, but that's like a storage area and stable. And then there's a little ladder that leads up to the first floor, which to us would be the second floor in the US. And that's where the living quarters start, and then you can go up from there to the other two floors of the building. And that's the whole tower, but it's actually historically accurate, and I think that's incredible and amazing, and I love it, and that's why I started backing this guy on Patreon. Here we go. So this is Chenonceau. Chateau de Chenonceau. And you can see the top layer here is the highest level. Then this is obviously one of the floors that has the bridge going across, and it is built in a river. And then there's another section to that right here, and you can see they even have the little path drawn to the edge of the water, and then they can lower the drawbridge to let people inside. And then even the very lowest level right here, and in fact if you look right at this lowest section right up there, those are the kitchens that are built into the base of this castle, this chateau. And it's absolutely incredible because you can put this in your game. It can be a very important place easily because it crosses the water and is easily closed to keep people from coming in or getting out. And I'm definitely using this in a game at some point. It just, so many ideas can come out of these maps, and I will often look at these to come up with an idea, like, okay, that makes me think of this, I'm going to put that together. But I also might need to have, like, man, I need a building that has a long bridge section to it and lets out on the other side. And you can go look for it, and sure enough, you find something. And that's often how I get a lot of my ideas for encounters or how to handle them, is checking out these maps. And I'm going to kind of go through here some of the different things that I have open just on my desktop, see if they spark any ideas for you. So here, the Dwarven Folly, that is Roldrock Castle. This is from Dice and Logos. And you can see it has a couple of nice kind of outbuildings / guard buildings, and then a larger section that's actually built into the stone itself. And if you have a game coming up where the characters are traveling to, dwarven territory, and you need a map that will reflect sort of that change in atmosphere and design, go find one of these, and it will give you ideas, and it will set the tone for your players as well. And I just think that's such a fantastic thing to be able to do. Dice and Logos, because he's on Patreon, does all of his maps for his patrons, and then makes many, many, many of them free to use. And so you'll find them all over the internet, and you'll see he's done work for Wizards of the Coast, and I'm sure a bunch of other companies. I know he's been doing work for Wizards of the Coast for, probably 5 years now or something like that. And I'm sure if you have any of the recent books, you've seen his artwork. Here's a monastery. I was looking for a monastery for an encounter in another group with a bad guy who had sort of created his lair in a monastery, but nobody else outside the monastery knows that it's for this bad guy, and they spend their time in there. Great. I didn't have to draw a map. I don't know what a monastery actually looks like. I would just be making it up. I'm sure these map makers have actually done their research to find out what do monasteries look like. I mean, this is obviously just one on built on the ground. It's not one of those ones high up in the mountains, but it could be. Here's another one that's kind of a cool looking temple. Also fantastic. It's got this huge yard here in the middle, which would be perfect for a dragon or some other giant creature to be in. Whether it's ruins or it's actually occupied by people, up to you. Depends on what you need. And I just so recommend for any GM going out and looking for things like this, because you will automatically get some ideas of things to run. Here's a bar, the Four-Tooth Drunk. Here's a keep on an island, which also just a fantastic idea, because the players could have to figure out a way to get out there. Maybe there's dangerous things in the water. Maybe the bridge itself has been trapped or has fallen into disrepair, and so there is no way to get out there other than swimming or finding a boat or making some way out there. If they're high enough level, maybe they could fly or something like that. But it's still not necessarily something you might have thought of in the moment if you were trying to come up with a setting for some encounter or the dungeon itself. Here's sort of a barrow mound kind of dungeon, which is great for like a roadside encounter or even a random encounter. It's always fun to be able to, roll up some kind of random encounter if you have it planned out, which is what I would recommend. To be able to find something like this and just use it, because it is exactly the sort of map that you need. Another fantastic map. This is actually from Dungeons and Dragons product. In fact, I think that's... No, it's a map done by the same guy who did the map in the starter set. It's not the Ice Spire Peak one. It's the first one. Fandelver, but same artist, and great looking map. Here's a map with just a one-level building with a 3-floor tower. So you can see he kind of laid out the 3 tower sections. I guess it's easier here. There's the one in the upper corner there, and then these 2 layers that are next to it, kind of going up to the top, are the other layers of that tower. Again, would you think to include a tower in the building that they're going to encounter? Here is a sample of some of the Dungeon Morph dice, which actually they're doing a 10th anniversary Kickstarter right now for these Dungeon Morph dice, which were done by Dice and Logos. And but this is just such a cool map anyway, because you could, certainly in a higher level game, and maybe even in a lower level game, you could have your characters go to another dimension where the dungeon is actually built like a cube, and they can walk off the edge to continue moving down a pathway, just as if it were a 6-sided die or a cube. And I think it's just such a cool idea, and not something that I would have thought of like right off the bat. I mean, even if you look right here, there's a room that is basically a rectangle right here, and it's on 2 different parts of the die. One die is this way and one die is that way, so that if they were connected, they would be right next to each other, but on a map, obviously, or laid out like this, they're not. Just a fantastic idea. Absolutely love it. some of these take a little bit to the Athenium of the Lost. So again, we've got kind of a broken bridge here. We've got the sometimes it takes a minute to load. What does this say? The other nice thing that Dyson Logos does is actually puts in a bunch of background for what his idea was for this map. You can ignore it or you can use it. There's probably fantastic information there to generate some ideas, which I am always in favor of inspiration as opposed to just being told to do something, right? And these maps just inspire so many ideas for me that I think it's worth looking at for everyone. So if you're a new GM and you're looking to come up with ideas, check out maps because you will get ideas. It is unavoidable. Even if you just have like, I've got this bad guy who's doing this thing and he needs some sort of base of operations, look through the maps and it will come up with some, you will come up with some sort of idea of like, oh, okay, that would be really interesting and he's going to need X number of people in this location to be able to defend it. Maybe there's something else there. Maybe there's traps. Maybe some sections are closed off. Maybe he's magically protected or she is magically protected part of the location. This map that we're looking at right now, it says it's the Lair of the Druid Lich, and it's a really beat up old tower with 3 floors plus the roof, and then the basement section that you can see right here that is more like a traditional dungeon crawl, but very, very cool and flavorful and interesting. So, as you can see, I have tons and tons of these tabs open. The Oubliette of the Forgotten Magus. Sorry, it takes a little bit of time to have these open because my computer is being slow. A little map, I don't know, Odrek's Orchard. So there's some trees in here, and then there's places for people to live inside if they want to. Another map with a tower and an underground section to boot. So just fantastic stuff. And if you are looking, this is in fact the abandoned building that I ended up setting a dragon's lair under, and the building that's showing here was filled with ghouls and a ghast, and then there was a black dragon that was living underneath in the little hole that's right here that you can kind of see. And I changed the location of it so that this was actually in the middle of a swamp. So everything that wasn't on this island was just swampland in the surrounding area. And then there was a road that sort of roughly led up to here. And it was absolutely perfect. I didn't need a whole huge map because I had their travel from the small town nearby through the swamp where they encountered some things, then to this location where they then figured out, oh, this is going to be a problem because all the ghouls and the ghast came running up to attack them. One of them ran to warn the dragon that people were here, and it was a pretty fun fight. Anyway, so this is really all I wanted to go over today, and I don't have anything specific to tell you other than if you're looking for ideas for an encounter or for an adventure or for the dungeon you have planned or even a one-shot that you're running, take a look at these maps, any map, and see what you come up with. It's always helpful, like in this dungeon right here, it looks like it's a really beat up set of ruins. Looks like it's probably actually in some kind of swamplands. And this could be maybe the location for a lizard folk settlement. It could be a location for some bandits who have stumbled across this and they know nobody really comes this far out. And some of the buildings are at least dry, if not completely comfortable, and they use it as their base of operations. They do it looks like Dyson does do some color maps every now and again, and just something to keep in mind. So if you are a new GM and you're looking for new things to try, and you're trying to come up with more and more ideas to kind of keep your players happy and keep things moving forward, man, maps I absolutely heartily recommend to everyone to take a look at because, like I said, I draw a lot of inspiration from them. Yeah, here's another great one. This is a tower up on a cliffside, and it actually has an opening into the caves that are underneath the tower. What a great location for whatever, a wyvern nest. Spiders could live in there. A dragon could live in there, especially a young one, because it's not that huge of a like the areas inside are not that big. There may not be anybody in the tower upstairs, or maybe there's some nuisance animals or some goblins who moved in, or kobolds if there's a dragon down below. And I mean, it just pre-writes itself. It's such an easy thing to do to look at these maps and figure out, oh, okay, I could put some stuff in there. This could also be a bandit hideout. They might use that high tower to keep track of who's moving through the valley or the canyon that this tower is above, and they then attack whoever passes by if it looks like a decent haul that they can make. This is another. I'm not sure if this is a D&D map. I think it was, but this is by another artist that I just love, who I cannot remember the name of. I even hired him a few years ago to do some maps, and now I can't think of it. But Jared Blando, that's it, and he does absolutely great-looking maps. So anyway, that's today's topic. Is if you're looking for ideas, go to a map. Search on Pinterest, back some people on Patreon. I'm definitely going to look at some of those names that I pulled up today because I love maps, and I save them to Pinterest and then go back and look at them and figure out what I want to use. So let's take a look at Pinterest again here real quick. So I have 2,261 pins on this map board. I have used probably a dozen of these maps, maybe a little bit more, but they're all here and they all give me ideas for things when I need them. Here is just a fantastic map of a huge tower. Just absolutely incredible, so cool looking, and that's the sort of thing that I find really inspiring. Here's another floating castle sort of thing, the flying rook rather. Another one from Milby's Maps. And I have just city maps, castle maps, keep maps, spaceships. You can see, some slightly non-traditional maps like this thing here, which is a tower that just has everything labeled going up. And it's a blast. Here's different mines, long stretches of mines. If your players are down in the depths and you need mines, you don't have to draw a bunch of boring, stretched out sections of mine. You can use some of these. Yeah, it's just great stuff. I love it, and it's so much fun to be able to look at these and come up with ideas. Here is a grand estate with the whole outdoors mapped out for you as well. Yeah, so give it a look. Like I said, if you want to follow my Pinterest page, it's at JON9836. And you are absolutely welcome to follow and check out what I've got there. And I hope some of this stuff is inspirational to you because it certainly is for me. It's also really cool to see things like these big blocky maps that are over here, because this is how buildings were made. All of that black stuff is solid stone, and definitely on the maps I made just by myself, I didn't have huge sections of black stone, but it makes sense if you're going to have arrow slits that there's got to be some amount of stone there protecting you, and especially if it's a castle or a keep, it's got to be able to defend against things like arrows and ballista and not ballista, trebuchets, that sort of thing, catapults. So it makes sense that there would be all sorts of stone. Really, really just fantastic stuff, and I hope you get some time to take a look at all of this and find some maps that you might like to use as well. That's it for today. I'll be back for another Standby for Adventure on Thursday, and we will do a Thaco Thursday then as well. I hope this is useful. It's sort of just something that struck me the other day, and I wanted to talk about it because this is not a topic that I've ever really seen covered before, and I find it incredibly useful, and I hope you do too. Thanks very much. See you soon. Stand by for adventure. Oh, and please do like, subscribe, and share. I only have about 50, 60 followers right now, and I would like to get many, many more. So please give me a hand. Thanks very much. Bye.